Okay, hey, happy Friday. I am so excited that Nancy Pappas is with us today. We are going to be discussing long-term care and how do we pay for it. Nancy, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Betsy.
And before we started, Nancy and I were discussing that care for seniors is something that many of us haven't really thought about, or adult children. And Nancy, why don't you tell us what you're learning and seeing out there?
Yeah, so my role is I help families place their loved ones in either senior living or find appropriate home care by using the expertise I've had from working in the industry for many years. And probably since I started this over 30 years ago, the biggest change, obviously, is people are living longer. So when you had a grandparent that retired at 60, they maybe had 5 years. What we're seeing now is that people can live retired a third of their life. And a lot of them didn't even have a thought that they would live that long and really didn't know how to prepare financially. Also, with great pharmaceuticals and healthcare, people are living longer with more chronic issues. Is that good? Sure. I mean, we all want to live longer, but we've now got these chronic issues that don't require health care, but it also doesn't allow someone to remain, completely independent in their own home.
Absolutely. And I speak to those issues with our housing shortage, that we didn't build houses. We stopped building houses in 2008 because the builders, everybody got slaughtered. And at the same time, we have older adults not leaving their homes. So you've got a double whammy there, a perfect storm. So now we have the parent who has Alzheimer's. What do we do?
Yes, Alzheimer's is definitely a difficult one. I know you and I have talked in the past about, what do we do as adult children? Well, the first thing we do for ourselves is try to stay as healthy as long as possible, because every independence we lose of taking care of ourselves, put a dollar sign in front of it. It costs money. Having said that, though, sadly, there are diseases out there that, like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, that sometimes we can't control. And someone can live, a very long time with this disease. They're physically okay, but cognitively, their impairment does not allow them to live well independently. And so what I see for people that have some form of Alzheimer's or dementia is that a loved one typically will take care of them for as long as they can. And what that means is that their own health is either becoming jeopardized, it's not working out, whether, there's some issues with personalities and combativeness of not wanting to be compliant with your loved ones. Sometimes you're better with strangers than you are with loved ones. And I find that caregivers at home for people with dementia do well up to a point of, I can get you, bathed, dressed, ready for the day. I'll get you some meals. I'll keep you safe. But there's this whole engagement piece that's missing. Like, oh, now I've got to entertain you. And, it's almost impossible. And so when I get the phone call, it's really that loved one that's really at that turning point. There's tremendous guilt often of, I just can't do it anymore. And I say, of course, because the communities that are doing this have 3 shifts a day and a whole, range of dining and activities and nursing care. So yes, it's very, very difficult. But why do people wait that long? Is also, well, money. That's the piece of the puzzle when, I talk with families. I want to get an idea of what an appropriate level of care is, where they're going to be safest, yet the most independent. But then there comes that piece. Well, how do I pay for this? And that's where the challenge comes in, because sometimes the greatest recommendation or place doesn't fit in with how they prepared financially for the future.
So your first word of caution to any children, let's call them adult children,
Yeah.
is to seriously take stock in preparing for your aging parents, for aging. You know, we all think about preparing for our college education for our children, but
Right.
this idea, this notion of preparing for aging is a newer phenomenon.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, right now, 7 out of 10 people over the age of 65 are going to need some sort of long-term care.
That's a big
You're going
number.
to spend most of their care money towards the end of their life.
Right. So, what are some of the options? How do you help some of these people? Do you advise people to make adjustments earlier, move, have help? You know, what's the best? I mean, aside from somebody having unlimited money and they just,
Right.
you know, your average listener here.
So I meet people all along the spectrum of, readiness to make a move. I have people that like to think ahead, or what I call the progressives, that are like, you know what, we know we're going to age. I saw what happened with my parents. We're going to make a plan and get into something sooner rather than later. And the benefit of that, even though you're spending, money that you wouldn't otherwise perhaps in your home, but that's debatable too. All of these independent communities want you to take stock of what you're paying for owning a home and what it costs to live in their community. And I think oftentimes you'll find that it's not far between. The only difference is you write one big check, which seems overwhelming as opposed to seeing all the little checks that go into maintaining a household. Ironically, though, by keeping yourself healthy, living in an environment where they're offering you a dining program. I mean, let's face it, if you're living alone, are you really eating the best that you can? And nutrition is so, so important. Taking your medications properly. And then the other piece that we learned with the pandemic is isolation. Isolation kills as well. It causes depression. There were so many people that, they survived COVID, but they really came out of it in sort of a cognitive decline because, they were living alone and didn't have the opportunities to get out. Communities will offer that for you. So sometimes what I see is the people that make those decisions early and go to an independent type setting often don't go down the path that they're, going to need assisted living and more care. So very often those people spend most of their years in that independent living setting because they're getting the appropriate care. They've gotten rid of all the homeowning burdens and they're really able to take care of themselves. It's sometimes really hard to see that when you've got this nest egg and you've got to make it last. I get it. I really get it. But sometimes those people that are hanging on so tight are actually heading down the very path that they're so fearful of. And that is they're not taking care of themselves and they're going to end up in that assisted living or that memory care, which again, a lot of that with the cognitive decline cannot be helped.
And, I see it as preventative medicine that we don't really see. If you're working out and eating healthy and everything goes along and you live to your 90 something, was it because you took care of yourself? There's no proof, but probably was. It certainly had contributed. So can we say for sure you're living alone, you're starting to talk to yourself all day long, you're depressed, you're not eating well, you're not necessarily, and you don't have that drive for life and your mind isn't occupied, you're not exercising that part of your brain? Yeah, that can absolutely lead to a decline. And can we prove it? Maybe not. But so many times people fall, they have a surgery, and then they need real nursing care.
Oh, absolutely. We call it the critical event.
Yes.
And so when I
name for it.
it's the critical event that spawns change. And those people are on the pipeline. When I meet them there, it's usually a situation of chaos. So basically what happens is you go into the hospital. If you get the 3-night admittance, they will offer a Medicare benefit short term of rehabilitation. Used to be 20 days for sure. Now we were just talking at our morning meeting, it's kind of down to 7 or 10 days because healthcare is losing a lot of money. So that means that they want to get people out of rehab quicker and quicker. Now, what I think people get caught up is then they say, well, but he's not ready to go home. He can't do this. That's not the criteria Medicare uses. So they're not going to keep him until like he can function like he did at home. They're going to keep him as long as they see that what they're doing is providing improvement. When there's a plateau and they feel like there's nothing more they can offer to improve it, it's discharge time. And that's where the chaos begins, because now you're probably talking more assisted living, sometimes memory care. And those places on average in the Chicagoland area cost, anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000 a month. And the shock of that for people is what? And especially memory care, I try to explain to people that, that one's even a specialty of assisted living because that person needs structure all day long from the time they wake up until they go to bed at night. And so that's what you're paying for. And that level of care is going to be the most residential level of care. You want to try to stay in that because then the next step is skilled nursing, which is the 24/7 healthcare. But you look at that and go, how do I wait $6,000 a month? He's only getting, $1,500 or whatever from Social Security. Of course, it's not kept up in any way, shape, or form. And so what then a family needs to do is rely on any other assets they may have. And that's frightening too. I want to leave a legacy to my kids. What happens if I run out of money? But the truth is, people have a hard time pivoting from wealth gathering to, it's now the rainy day.
Right.
This is the rainy day.
Very good. That's a very good point. And
you need to start spending those assets at this time.
Okay. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Yes.
We have a mortgage on our house. We sell it. We come up with $50,000. Mm-hmm. That's our assets or whatever. Dad has Alzheimer's. What do we do? Now he is getting Social Security. So
there's a couple things. First of all, we're going to consider. Yeah, we're going to consider his age.
Okay. So should I give you an age? Wait, you're frozen, Nance. Let's see. Go ahead. Give me an age.
I'm sorry, you were breaking up a little bit on me. That's why.
Okay, so we're going to consider his age.
Yeah, so we're going to consider his age. Is this someone who's 93 or someone who's 73, and has 20 years ahead? Because the fact of the matter is these communities at assisted living level, dementia, memory care, is going to average, that's going to be a little bit more than assisted living. That's probably going to be around $8,000. So what we have to do is figure out what his income is and any other things he has coming in and subtract that from the $8,000 and then divide whatever assets he has available. And that's going to give you how many months, years, hopefully, that he has to live in this place. And, what I'm now talking about are private pay places, which was what most of them that you drive by and you see out there, they're private pay.
Okay. So the elephant in the room is, what do you do if you don't have that?
Right.
I think people think there's some magic thing out there that's a big secret.
Correct. They do. And there is a safety net, and it's called Medicaid. And it will provide health care, but only in specific facilities and communities. So not every place you see is able to access that benefit for you. The state will certify a facility, and of course they keep control on their budgets by not giving a lot of those certificates out. So that's where the challenge comes in. And so by finding out how long someone has before they completely run out of money, we're able to make a decision as to whether or not it would be a good idea now to move into what Illinois offers on the assisted living level, which is called supportive living. And supportive living is an assisted living that has the Medicaid benefit. So that very word means that this is a community that can access that benefit to you once you've outlived your resources. Now, having said that, these communities have found they really can't survive solely on Medicaid. So their average rate is around $5,500. They might be getting reimbursed $4,400. So it's not even, and the length of time it even takes to get that money. So in order for them, to run a quality building, they need to do things like offer, get a tax credit, which means that's why when you go to these places, you have to be 62 or older to move in. It's for that very reason. So they can access the tax credit. Another way that they keep their business going is by requiring people to move into their community while they still have some of these assets, the leftovers of the sale of the house. It's called a Medicaid Spenddown. And everyone has to do it to get on Medicaid. And what you have to spend down to is $2,000. If you're part of a couple, you can keep $109,000. But nonetheless, you have to spend down to that point. If you come into one of those communities and they can rely on a certain percentage of what we call private pay, you're going to pay the full boat, the full $5,500. They will accept you. And after month 5 or 6, some places have a 2-year requirement, whatever their requirement is, they will then convert you to Medicaid. So it's kind of hard to wrap your head around. It requires of really thinking about the future. Those that choose not to do that and go into what I call private pay assisted living or memory care, they spend down to $2,000. That type of supportive living is now off the table. You'll be put on a list that will take 18, 24 months to get into straight Medicaid.
So, okay, here's a question. Most of these communities will say to you, well, if you run out of money, we won't just kick you out. Where are they sending them? Because they can't get into a supportive care. And correct me if I'm wrong, but these supportive care communities are few and far between, from what I understand.
Correct. One of the hardest things I have to deal with is kind of explaining to people that location is now off the table. Like, I know you want it to be, right down the street, whatever, but that's off the table.
I mean, they're probably, how many are in the north of, in the state of Illinois? Probably not that many.
Well, and here's the really sad part. In Chicagoland, in terms of the memory care with a dementia component, there are maybe 1 or 2 in the Chicagoland area. I just sent a list to a friend of mine. The rest are in Kankakee and Peoria, and so they did not open a lot in Chicago. There are, however, dozens in the Chicagoland area that offer assisted living. That doesn't mean they don't have dementia residents, but they're dementia residents that aren't an elopement risk. So they still kind of work in that assisted living level. So yeah, there's a lot of nuances here that have to be, considered.
And so what happens? So what if you're a person, so you move into community XYZ thinking that you're going to be a private pay, and because they tell you don't worry about it, and now you're down to your $2,000. Is this a legitimate question to ask?
It is a legitimate question. And what happens then is you have to start looking for any place that's going to be offering a Medicaid bed. And it will most likely be in a skilled nursing facility, whether you need skilled nursing or not. And it may be a supportive living, but not probably in a neighborhood that you even considered.
And it would be, like you said, it's a bed. It's not a room. It's
right.
a bed.
Yeah,
It's
I,
like,
I I really try to manage people's expectations. There's healthcare and there's free healthcare. This is free healthcare. I will not tell you that this is going to be a great facility, and it's going to, I have people come back to me in horror,
yeah,
honestly, with some of the places that are out there, which is why we work so hard to educate people to not spend down to that point without considering one of these other supportive livings. And going back to your, question about a community that takes someone in, what I have found in Chicagoland is the good communities, the ones that I like to work with, that I would put my own parent in, will not jeopardize someone's financial well-being. As a matter of fact, that's where I get many of my leads, because they're like, Nancy, I have this person, they really want to move in our place, but they're going to run out of money in a year. And so, that's kind of comforting to know that there are communities out there that aren't just looking at their own.
that is great. That is great.
So
So
I
they
will
say,
give kudos to those communities that do that, and it's all part of education.
okay, so those are places where they realize there just aren't enough assets here to give you as many years as you probably need.
Correct.
So, and then the people that don't even know about your services, and just the Joe person on the street, who's been on Medicaid their whole life, they just end up in a Medicaid bed probably somewhere.
Correct. A long-term Medicaid bed somewhere. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
As opposed to just on the street. It's the next.
Yes, and that's kind of how I look at it too, because that is kind of the one step away. They are, getting some care. That is the safety net, that Illinois has put in place. And thank God we had it. The other thing is that most states don't even offer it in an assisted living level, which makes sense because they save money and people don't always need the medical care of a nursing home. So it's a win-win really for both sides. So I applaud Illinois on that, at least that they do offer it in the assisted living level.
Right.
But it's just, I think the piece where families get caught up is these sort of business models that the good ones have are not something you're going to find when you Google their site. They're not going to come out and say, that we want you to have 6 months of private pay before you move in. And sometimes that changes. If their occupancy is really doing well, then it could be, well, we want a year. And then when occupancy drops, they're like, hey, we'll take 3 months, so that's also very fluid. And part of my job is to keep abreast of that information so I can help families, because it changes constantly.
Yeah. And I think this all stems from a very big misconception that grew out of Medicare, thinking, I reached 65, I don't have to worry about a thing. That is not true. That, I'm going to get my Social Security, I'm going to get my Medicare, I'm set, I'm good. You are not good. You are good as long as you can pay for where you live, you can pay for the supplement to your Medicare, and you can take care of yourself, or you have the money to take care of yourself.
Betsy, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly it. It's that offer them sort of this false sense of security until, something happened where, they can no longer, be at home. Because Medicare is very much that short-term piece. And we all have to start thinking about that long-term piece and, how we're going to fund it. I think it's a light bulb moment for adult children. Like, well, what am I going to do different? Whether it's getting long-term care insurance or self-insuring or, trying to stay as healthy as long as possible and control my diabetes or what have you, all the above.
Right. And you really, if you don't have long-term care, you have to save for it like you're saving for college.
Yes.
In our community, a lot of people said, I'm saving for my kids' college. Well, now you have to save for you cannot spend your money and just go to Tahiti and have nothing left, or you will be in a Medicaid bed.
Exactly. So, and yes, and the student loan is now your house.
Exactly. Well, you have been wonderful. thank you. I know this isn't maybe what people wanted to hear, but that's why they need you, Nancy, because this is not simple. This is not, okay, you just sign up for Medicare and you're on your way and here we go. This is another one of these American crises that
Indeed.
people are just waking up to.
Indeed it is.
So thank you. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. And thank you again. And you can reach Nancy by calling me, and her information is on my Facebook page. Thanks again.
Thanks, Betsy.
Bye.